Hi, John. How are you? Good afternoon. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation to join us. How are you doing today?
Hi, Rafa. It's always good to be with you. I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Thank you again. Thank you for participating with us. For everyone watching, we have John Atasic, who's representing Turkey today in this interview. And the idea of this project is to create a space to invite international experts in business in different markets around the world to talk about the cultural and communication aspect of doing business in their countries. So we have 7 questions we've been asking all the interviewees, and we will start now. John, tell us a little bit more about you and what kind of work that you do, please.
Yeah, sure. My work takes a little bit of explanation. I am from Turkey, as you know. By the way, maybe speaking of cultural things, the first thing is the name of our country was changed to Turkey just a couple of years ago. So we no longer call it Turkey. For our colleagues, who are coming to do business in Turkey, and I even actually trip sometimes. And when you say Turkey, people really respect that a lot. So maybe that might be a first insight to share. But what I do in Turkey is I sit in Turkey, but I work around the world. As a Latina Impact, we sit at the intersection of international development, as our common background is, in investment banking, and we basically source transactions, help structure them, and execute them. And all of our transactions are focused on impact investing. And impact investing, for our viewers who don't know, is actually uh, investing to solve our planet's social or environmental problems. So we look for three things in our investments, in all of our transactions. The first one is intentionality. So what is that business trying to do? Is it, how is it generating its revenues? So we look to see that the business is generating its revenues by providing a solution to an environmental or social problem. So it's a direct engagement with that problem instead of a sidecar. Like, when you and I were working together 20 years ago, like corporate social responsibility. So intentionality here matters. The second is, of course, the how is this impact linked to the operations of the business? How can we measure that impact? How can we optimize and report on it? And third, it's an investment. But investment doesn't mean profit maximization. We work across a spectrum of investors, some concessional, some foundations, some are looking for commercial rate returns. So there is a transaction, a deal for everyone, and we feel very proud to be at that intersection where we can create these structures to bridge people interested in solving the planet's problems through finance. That's what we do.
No, that's great. Thanks, John. And it's, as you mentioned, we've known each other for many years, and it's interesting to see your career development, transition, all these added value that you've been creating over the years as a professional. So, and also that you have this international mindset. That's why we really wanted to get you involved in this project. You lived in the US when we both met. So congratulations on all the work you do. And for those people interested, they definitely can reach out to you through the LinkedIn article we're going to write from this interview. So thanks so much,
Absolutely.
John. Moving to the second question, what are some things you recommend people to do or say when first meeting and speaking with a person with whom they want to initiate a project or do a business opportunity together in Turkey, what and also what should they not do or say?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very good question. In Turkey, actually, people are on the whole very relaxed. But there are certain things that are, of course, different across cultures, and they may be interpreted differently in Turkey. A nice smile, a warm, firm handshake always makes a big difference when you go into a room. Eye contact is definitely okay, and in fact, highly recommended. Make sure that you keep an eye contact when you're listening and when you're speaking, especially when you're listening to someone. That will immediately resonate with your counterparties. We like talking about families. It's totally okay to ask, do you have kids? How are they doing during your next meeting? How are your parents, etc. Remembering these details in your second, third meeting will actually make a big impression on your counterparty. Um, I think people are impressed as probably in most other countries. If you do a little bit of background research on them, on the business before you go, showing that you cared, you're not just meeting someone, but you're meeting that person and that person from that business, and that you're excited to be there for some particular aspects of what you've been able to find out. That will also make a lot of things. Of course, being able to at least trying even to say a few Turkish words would also go well, even just to say hello, which actually would be a good investment for anyone wanting to do business in the wider region here. Merhaba, we say merhaba. Different variations of this are used across the region in other countries in the Middle East. Or to say thank you, which is not always easy. We say teşekkürler in Turkish, which is thanks. It's not formal, it's not informal, it's great. We use it every day. Teşekkürler. That would be very, very, very helpful. What not to do? I don't think you should go immediately into your PowerPoint slides or business, etc. A little bit of chit chat, small talk is always useful, and you'll see that it will naturally evolve into the business. At the very beginning of each meeting, they'll ask you if you'd like to have coffee or tea. For us, maybe I see a lot of colleagues coming from abroad asking for Turkish coffee as the first thing in the morning. We actually that's totally okay. But you will not find a Turkish person drinking coffee first thing in the morning, Turkish coffee. We drink it after breakfast, after lunch, and after dinner. But we'll drink tea all day long, starting with breakfast until we go to bed. So they'll ask you tea, and that tea will keep coming and then coming and coming, and just enjoy it. You'll see that one suggestion might be don't go into business before the tea has arrived. Okay. Um, I would also avoid political stereotypes. We're a diverse country with different views. Um, we're very homogenous in a lot of ways, but we have some differences in the way we perceive where our country sits, what our culture, represents, and that's mostly East and West, because we're at a very beautiful place in this part of the world, right at the intersection of Europe and Middle East and Asia. So we have a little bit of all of those, and people will identify the country with different parts. So I would avoid getting into that unless you're very sure about your counterparty's views. But I wouldn't make political jokes. Those are usually, not very common in Turkey. Yeah. So maybe, yeah, a quick answer, maybe a long answer to your first question. Say.
Oh, great insight, great insight. And it's funny you mentioned about the coffee aspect here in my own country. First thing they do is drink coffee wherever you go.
Yeah.
It's in the first thing in the morning they drink coffee. But
Yeah, but maybe Rafa on that one, the word for breakfast in Turkish is kahvaltı, which is actually kahve altı, which actually means before coffee. So we have breakfast before coffee. The word for breakfast is before coffee.
that's
So
very interesting. Wow.
yeah, maybe a factoid for your
Wow,
viewers.
very interesting. No, thanks. And also the political aspect is very interesting. The human connection, you really it's interesting because I'm talking to different people in this project, and really it is important to understand which culture values this human connection initially before getting talking about business immediately. So
Yeah,
important to take note of that as a foreigner coming in.
yeah,
Perfect. Thank you. Moving to the third question, again focusing on culture. We recognize that it's important to have a deeper cultural understanding of a local place when doing business there. So, what cultural aspects might be considered when doing business in Turkey? You mentioned a little bit in the first question, but any other thing you could add value,
um,
please?
yeah. Maybe wanting to recognize is of course, institutions are dealing with one another, but for a lot of Turkish people, business is between individuals, between people. So building that trust and giving space for that trust to develop will be critical. And unless you feel comfortable that you've built that trust, everything until then is actually really a path to building that trust. Maybe you're not ready to shake hands yet. So I'd highly recommend that you take your time, just like you wouldn't start your meeting with a presentation. Don't try to go immediately for a handshake on the deal. Make sure you build that trust. That will actually pay off in the long run. Um, in terms of other cultural things, hierarchy will be different from business to business, internal hierarchy. Some businesses will be actually very traditional, very old school, if you will, where there will be hierarchy. You might have five, six people in that room, but only one person will do all the talking, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean that those other people are in the room but not present. They're fully involved. They're fully listening, and they will actually express their views after the meeting to that one person who's talking to you, and those views will be valued. So if you are in a setting like that, make sure you engage everyone, even if they are silent, through eye contact, through recognition of their presence, and acknowledging their maybe involvement, non-verbal involvement in the meeting. That's very important. And like most Mediterranean and Middle Eastern countries, um, be prepared to be flexible with time. Meetings may start late, may end late, etc. Your counterparty may have to arrive late. In Istanbul, it's just traffic is just terrible. For face-to-face meetings, we always, try to budget a lot. And remember that you might end up being late too. That's okay. But then just shoot a message, say we're stuck in traffic. Those little things will actually make it totally okay for you to be late, but be ready that your counterparty may be late as well. That's unfortunately the reality of living in a city of what I guess now 16 million people or so in Istanbul. Yeah.
Good tips. Good tips. No, it's good also you mentioned you live in Istanbul, so
Yeah.
it is a very cosmopolitan. Used to be called Constantinople. No, it's a very historical city.
Yes.
Definitely a country I want to go and a city to visit. No, great insights. I think it's very important to take note of these as someone outside looking to come into Turkey. Thank you. Moving to the fourth question, if someone does not speak Turkish, what do you suggest a foreigner to do to be able to communicate more successfully with locals in Turkey, and how to be able to do business there if they don't speak the local language?
Yeah, very good question. Um, in most major cities, your counterparties will speak English. Maybe not as fluent as someone from the US or UK, but you'll be able to communicate in technical details, etc. There might be, especially senior people will speak English. But there will be businesses where English will not be spoken, and you will not be expected to speak Turkish, obviously. Um, um, the obviously the only solution there is then to have an interpreter. Then how to act, how to react, how to conduct a meeting in the presence of an interpreter. My humble recommendation would be again to make sure that you realize you're talking to your counterparty and not to the interpreter. Make sure that you don't lose that eye contact, and make sure that when your counterparty is talking to the interpreter, keep that eye contact still with them, so that conversation is through the interpreter but still between you and your counterparty. I think that would make a lot of difference. And as we said at the very beginning of this chat, um, nobody's expecting you to speak Turkish. That's not going to be expected. But any tiny effort to try to show that I'm trying to learn a little bit about your language, etc., that will go a long way to actually again build that cordial relationship and trust. As you go to eastern parts of the country, English may be more challenging. But if you're operating in Istanbul and major cities on the western coast, on the Mediterranean coast, if you're working with startups, for example, English will never be a problem. They all speak English fluently. If you're working with known brand name companies, blue chip companies, international brands, they all speak English as well. And most, if you're working with a family company, if the first generation doesn't speak English for whatever reason, second, third generation will certainly speak, and they're usually involved still with the business and can help with that translation.
Yeah, great inputs, John. And also to take into account the strategic location, geographically where you're located, Istanbul and Turkey. Most people, you have this intersection between the three continents, let's say three regions, and people do speak English as usually the language of business is English. So your probability of having more people speak English is higher. But yeah, interpretation is key. So thank you for that. Moving to the fifth question, also focus on communication. To get better results in visibility, or sales, what are your recommendations on the most effective ways to do marketing for products or services in Turkey? And it's a little bit more focused on how can a foreign company come in and do some marketing, and how would they do marketing or sales? What's the best approach in Turkey?
Yeah, this is not an easy question because the answer depends on what the product or the service is and what the target market is. Uh, for if you're targeting young people, if you're targeting selling goods, retail stuff, social media is the way to go here. And the two most common social media channels in Turkey are Instagram and increasingly TikTok. Facebook is more with the older generation here, so you could target the older generation with Facebook. But Instagram, and especially Instagram, will cover across ages for retail kinds of products, and TikTok is increasingly becoming more and more important. But if it's for professional services, if it's B2B, if it's you know investment stuff, it's advisory stuff, it's those kinds of things, then LinkedIn is the way to go. Uh, and LinkedIn has become very popular and is still very popular. Those are the ways to go. Uh, the bullet, depends on what level the business is, of course, but outdoor marketing is huge in Turkey. Bulletin boards are big. There's a big market in that area, but of course, those require a lot more investment than social media. Uh, and one thing I would suggest is, and I'm sure our viewers are probably more knowledgeable about this. Translating marketing campaigns from one language to another just doesn't work. So make sure that you work with a local actor who can transform that campaign to the local realities and capture that. That's very important because we have a very strong culture here, and it will resonate a lot more if your campaign is shaped around the local realities and the culture.
Absolutely, absolutely, very clear. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask you, and you answered all regarding the platforms, which platforms. So you made it very clear for the viewers to understand who they are as a company, who are they targeting in the market there, so they have to understand which platform to invest in ads or creating a company page only. So that's important to take into account. Moving to the sixth question, which is really focused on empathy, and you mentioned this in the beginning as well, how to connect with people. If a business partner in Turkey wants to get to know you better, invites you to a local coffee, tea place, a restaurant, or even a happy hour, a virtual happy hour, what are the kinds of topics people like to talk about that's not related to business, for example?
Yeah, yeah. Well, food is always safe. You can always talk about food. If you're in Istanbul, you can always talk about the beauty of the Bosphorus. Those that will always resonate. People will talk about that. People will want to hear stories from you about your country. So feel free to share them. Family is a topic that you can safely discuss. Um, 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 Recent developments in the country, how the country has boomed and now is going through some financial challenges. Those are topics that might come later on because they are kind of uh, stepping into that realm of political discussions, which may get sensitive. So it's up to you to if you want to avoid them. But at a dinner, at a happy hour, or people may want, they'll feel more relaxed getting into those. But again, these are sensitive topics, so make sure you understand where your counterparty stands, and that that you don't actually walk into a disagreeing position with them. But you'll know that very quickly. Um, Sports is also big. You know, and this is something that I suffered from when I moved back to Turkey, because all these business meetings, especially in the mornings, they would start with talking about the latest game, soccer, etc. Sports is huge, and sports for a lot of people means just soccer. Increasingly, other basketball is huge. Turkey is very successful in basketball, super successful in women's volleyball. Showing appreciation and recognition of all of these things actually would mean that you care about this country and you've gone a little bit deeper than just soccer, and know that this country is actually trying to do something in those areas. history is always something that you can talk about. Yeah, these are some of the things. So it's easy. If you're talking to some older people, they will reminiscence of the old days, how how the city was, the country was actually not this crowded. I guess the same in all of the countries. So depends on the age group as well. Uh, for if you're working with startups, and if you're a tech person, by all means, share what's happening in your country, the latest conference you've been to, people you've met, because people are thirsty for knowledge and for new connections, and they would actually appreciate where you're coming from if you share more about yourself. It's okay to talk about yourself here without bragging, of course, sharing your experience, sharing your own views. That would be a nice social conversation.
That's great. I've taken notes. For sure, I would fit in quickly with talking about soccer, which is something I follow, and they show Turkish football, soccer here in Brazil.
Yeah.
A lot of Brazilian players play there. So, but I found it interesting, the history part, which is fascinating to me. I think it would be interesting to connect with people. And one thing that I think you could mention here in South America, a lot of soap operas, Turkish soap
Oh, yeah.
operas have been shown in South America, which is I was in Peru a couple years ago, and they were showing a Turkish soap opera. So that's another soft power, another information that
Yeah.
from your country that people
It's
appreciate as well. Very
one
interesting.
of our biggest exports, like you said. Yeah. Uh,
Exactly, exactly. Thank you, John. The last question, coming to the last question, what one word should everyone learn to say? One word or one phrase that everyone should learn to say in Turkish, and why?
well, I think people will be inclined to know. Thank you, which is teşekkür. Teşekkür ederim is actually the longer form of it, and it would go well. But if you want to surprise and say something different, I think a nice one would be when you go into a meeting, they will say "hoş geldiniz," which means welcome. It literally means hoş means well, cheerfully, pleasantly. Welcome is came. You came with cheer, or with in a pleasant way. The counter word to that is hoş bulduk, which is uh, uh, we've received your wellness in a way. We've found it with you, kind of. So you'll always say teşekkür ederim, but I think when you go into a meeting, when they say Rafa, welcome, they'll say it in English, and if you say in Turkish hoş bulduk Can, that would surprise me, and that would say you've actually done some homework. So I would say hoş bulduk might be a nice one, easy and with surprise. HOS with a tail, BULDUK. Hoş bulduk.
Well, I think all those are useful. I think it's worth writing them all in the article. If you could later spell it out to me, for me, that would be great.
Sure.
I intend to put it in the article. I think all of them are very useful. It's good to know. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, John. This is the end of the interview. Thanks so much for your time, for sharing your insights, your recommendations, your experience. I hope this interview will benefit you as well. And I encourage those watching who want to reach out to you to write to you. And we're gonna put your contact information in the written form, the LinkedIn article we're writing on this. So thank you so much. Any final comments or recommendations for everyone watching?
Oh, well, I'm, wishing all the best to your viewers who are venturing into new countries, trying to do new businesses, connecting with people. And if anyone has any interest in trying to do, good and do well at the same time through impact investing and our projects, if they would like to learn more, we're always here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John. Have a great day. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Rafael. Bye.